Stephen John Port, born on February 22, 1975, is a British individual who gained notoriety as a serial killer and serial rapist. He was found guilty of murdering 4 young men and committing numerous rapes and sexual assaults against others. On November 25, 2016, Port was sentenced to life imprisonment with a whole life order. During his early years, Port was born in Southend-on-Sea, Essex, and his family later relocated to Dagenham in East London when he was just a year old. Growing up, he experienced bullying at school and was often considered a loner. Teachers described him as having a quiet personality, and his neighbor noticed peculiar childlike behavior in him even as an adult, such as playing with children's toys. After completing school at the age of 16, he initially pursued art college, but financial constraints led him to train as a chef for 2 years instead. According to a former romantic partner, Port's personality was characterized as childish, which ultimately led to the end of their relationship. It was during his mid-20s that he publicly identified as gay. Port resided with his parents until his early 30s, after which he lived alone in a flat located in Barking, London. He worked as a chef at a stagecoach bus depot in West Ham and even made a brief appearance on the television show MasterChef. At the time of the murders, he had an athletic physique due to his regular gym visits. To conceal his baldness, he wore a professionally attached blonde toupee, which boosted his confidence when interacting with other men. Victims. Port targeted his victims through online platforms and apps catering to gay and bisexual individuals. He created false personas, fabricating details about his background, such as claiming to be an Oxford University graduate and a former Royal Navy serviceman. One of his deceitful profiles portrayed him as a special needs teacher. Employing gamma-hydroxybutyric acid, GHB, a date rape drug, Port drugged and sexually assaulted his victims, leading to the death of 4 individuals in his Barking residence. The prosecution revealed that the victims had succumbed to fatal drug overdoses, primarily caused by high levels of GHB. However, Port covertly administered other substances to his victims, including poppers, amyl nitrite, Viagra, mephedrone, and crystal meth, methamphetamine. The bodies of 3 of the murdered individuals were discovered in the graveyard of St. Margaret's Church in Barking. Port initiated contact with his first victim, Anthony Walgate, a 23-year-old fashion student who occasionally worked as an escort, by posing as a client and offering him £800 for his services. They arranged to meet at Barking Station, after which Port drugged and raped Walgate. Ultimately, Port administered a lethal overdose of GHB, resulting in Walgate's death. In the early hours of June 19th, Port dragged Walgate's lifeless body to the pavement outside his flat and anonymously contacted emergency services using his own mobile phone. He falsely described the situation as an encounter with a young boy who appeared to be either collapsed, having a seizure, or intoxicated. Subsequently, Port returned to his flat. Shortly before 8 a.m., Walgate was pronounced dead. Unfortunately, the evidence linking Port to Walgate's demise was initially overlooked. Port faced conviction for perverting the course of justice in March 2015 due to inconsistencies in his statements to the police. He received an 8-month sentence but was released in June with electronic monitoring. Between August 2014 and September 2015, Port continued his spree, murdering 3 additional men: Gabriel Kavari, a 22-year-old who had recently moved to London from Slovakia and briefly resided with Port Daniel Whitworth, a 21-year-old chef from Gravesend, Kent, and Jack Taylor, a 25-year-old forklift truck driver who lived with his parents in Dagenham. The second and third victims were found in separate instances by the same woman walking her dog in the graveyard of St. Margaret of Antioch Church in Barking. The last victim's body was discovered in a nearby park. Port strategically placed a fabricated suicide note alongside Whitworth's body, implicating him in Kavari's death and suggesting guilt as the motive for his own demise. Port exploited various online platforms and applications, including Sleepy Boy, Grindr, Hornet, FitLads, Badoo, Gaydar, Flirt, Daddy Hunt, Planet Romeo, Manhunt, Slave Boys, and Couchsurfing, to initiate contact with his victims. In acknowledgement of the Metropolitan Police's mishandling of the investigation into the killings, the families of Port's victims received compensation. The Independent Office for Police Conduct, IOPC, conducted a reinvestigation into the Met's initial handling of these cases. Conviction and life sentence. In 2015, Port faced charges related to multiple murders and administering poison. During the trial at the Old Bailey in June 2016, the prosecution added more charges, including administering poison, rape, and sexual assault. Additionally, he faced alternative charges of manslaughter. Port, appearing through a video link from HM Prison Belmarsh, pleaded not guilty to all charges. On November 23, 2016, Port was found guilty of the murders, assaults by penetration, and rapes of Anthony Walgate, 23, Gabriel Kovari, 22, Daniel Whitworth, 21, and Jack Taylor, 25. He was also found guilty of raping 3 other men whom he drugged, administering a substance with intent in 10 instances, and committing 4 sexual assaults. In total, there were 11 known victims of Port's crimes. Malcolm McHaffey, Deputy Chief Crown Prosecutor for CPS London, commented on the case, highlighting that over a 3-year period, the defendant committed a series of murders and serious sexual offenses against young men. Port exerted control over these individuals by using the drug GHB without their consent, showcasing his chilling and calculated manipulation. The case was particularly complex due to the extensive evidence gathered from various social media platforms used by Port. On November 25, 2016, at the Old Bailey, Mr. Justice Openshaw sentenced Port to life imprisonment with a whole life order, ensuring he would remain incarcerated for the rest of his life. Port is currently held at HMP Belmarsh. Aftermath. In August 2018, it was revealed that Port had lodged an appeal against his murder convictions. In November 2018, it was announced that Port's appeal had been rejected. In August 2020, in a Brazilian chat show program, Que Historia é essa, Porchat, hosted by Fabio Porchat, an audience member named Rafael told his story of dating Port. Rafael had moved to London in 2012 at 19 years old and had been working as a waiter when he met Port on a dating website. After they started dating, Rafael moved into Port's apartment, where they lived together for a little longer than a month. After they broke up, Rafael moved back to Brazil, where he got a different job and started another relationship. One day, he decided to search for Port's name online and found out about the murders through an article on BBC. Rafael said he first read the words documentary, Stephen Port, and serial killer, and was interested since he thought Port had made a documentary on a serial killer, until he read it and realized what it was actually about. After he discovered the truth about Port, Rafael said that, looking back, there were a lot of strange things going on. Another former partner of Port's also claimed to have broken up with Port due to his unusual behavior. In July 2020, it was announced that a fresh inquiry was set to take place in January 2021 to examine all 4 deaths and probe into any police failings.